I stood there, staring at my broken bicycle, the one I used to carry firewood to the market every week. It lay on the dirt path, the front wheel bent out of shape, and my chest tightened. That bike wasn't just a bike, it was my livelihood. Without it, how would I make enough money to buy food, pay school fees, or even fix the bike itself? The thought sent a chill through me, even under the hot sun. I'd had the bicycle for years. It wasn't new when I got it, but I'd kept it running with small repairs. Every nut, every chain link had a story, and now it felt like a part of my life had crumbled. My family depended on what I earned from selling firewood. We didn't have much, but at least we managed. Now, I wasn't so sure. I knelt down, inspecting the damage, hoping it wasn't as bad as it looked. But it was. The wheel wobbled, the chain had snapped, and the handlebar was crooked. I tried to push it forward, but it wouldn't budge. My shoulders sagged as I realized the truth, I'd need money to fix it. Money I didn't have. I sat under a tree by the roadside to think. The afternoon sun blazed down, and the air was heavy with dust and heat. I'd been chopping wood since morning, and I still had a long walk back home with nothing to show for it. My head throbbed with worry. What would I tell my mother? How would we manage this week? Every coin I made went to food and school fees. I didn't even have a savings jar like some people in the village did. Everything I earned left my hands almost as quickly as it came in. As I sat there, people passed by, some greeting me, others too busy with their own lives. I envied their calmness. It seemed like no one else was worried about how they'd make it to the next day. Was it just me? Or were they just better at hiding it? That evening, when I finally reached home, my mother could tell something was wrong. "Kin, what happened?" she asked. I explained everything, and she listened quietly, her face calm but serious. When I was done, she said something that surprised me. "Why not go and talk to your Uncle Okechukwu? He's been through worse than this, and he always finds a way. Maybe he can help you." Uncle Okechukwu lived a few kilometers away, but I decided to go see him the next day. Everyone in the village said he was the wisest man around. He used to be a teacher, but now he was retired. Despite that, he never seemed to struggle with money. He had a small house, a big yard, and a calm way of living that I admired. If anyone had answers, it would be him. The next morning, I walked to his compound. It was a quiet place, with mango and orange trees swaying gently in the breeze. Uncle Okechukwu was sitting outside on a wooden chair, peeling an orange. When he saw me, he smiled and waved me over. "Kin, my boy," he said, his voice warm. "What brings you here so early?" I told him everything about the broken bicycle, the money problems, and my fears. He listened carefully, nodding every now and then. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and looked up at the sky as if he were thinking deeply. "Kin," he said finally, "let me ask you something. How much do you make every time you sell firewood?" I didn't understand why he was asking that, but I answered anyway. "About 2,000 Nigerian nairas," I said. "And how many trips do you make in a week?" 3, sometimes 4, I replied. He nodded, doing the math out loud. "So you make about 8,000 Nigerian nairas in a good week, right?" "Yes," I said, still unsure where he was going with this. He smiled, but it wasn't the comforting kind of smile. It was the kind that made you feel like you were about to learn something important. "Now, tell me," he said, leaning forward, "if your legs couldn't walk anymore, or your hands couldn't chop wood, how much would you make then?" I froze. It wasn't something I had ever thought about. But the answer was clear: nothing. Uncle Okechukwu sighed and sat back in his chair. "You see, Kin, you're working hard, no doubt. But you're working for money the wrong way. Your money should be working for you instead." I frowned, confused. "How can money work for me, Uncle? I don't even have enough to save, talk less of making it do anything." He chuckled softly. "That's what I thought too when I was your age," he said. Then he pointed to an orange tree in his yard. "Let me tell you a story about this tree." Uncle Okechukwu leaned forward in his chair, his eyes resting on the orange tree as if it held the answer to all my problems. When I planted that tree many years ago, he began, it was nothing but a tiny seedling. It didn't give me fruit right away. I had to water it, protect it from goats and chickens, and wait. For years, it stood there, doing nothing, or so it seemed. He picked up an orange from the small basket beside him and held it up. But look at it now. This tree gives me more oranges than I could ever eat. I sell some, give some away, and still have enough left over. The best part. I don't have to do much anymore. The tree takes care of itself. I nodded slowly, trying to see the connection. But what does that have to do with money, Uncle? He smiled. Patience, King. Let me explain. That tree is like an investment. The time I spent caring for it in the beginning is like the effort you put into starting something. At first, it feels like you're working for nothing. But if you're consistent, one day it starts giving back and keeps giving. I frowned. But I don't have money to plant, Uncle. What can I even invest in? Uncle Okechukwu set the orange down and looked me in the eye. Start small. Think of something you can do once, but that will keep paying you even when you're not working. For example, do you know how your Aunt Neka earns money? From a poultry farm, I said. Yes, he said. But what you might not know is that she doesn't sell the eggs herself anymore. She made a deal with a shop in town. They buy her eggs in bulk every week. All she has to do now is make sure her workers take care of the chickens. The money comes in even if she's not in the farm. I thought about Aunt Neka's farm. It made sense. She didn't look as stressed as I felt, and her life seemed more comfortable. But what about me? I asked. I don't have chickens, and I can't fix my bicycle without money. Uncle Okechukwu nodded. You're right. But there are other ways. Do you remember that time I helped you fix your bicycle chain? I nodded. Yes, you're very good with tools, Uncle. He smiled. Exactly. Skills can also work for you. Imagine this, instead of cutting firewood every day, you use your free time to learn how to repair bicycles. People in this village always need repairs, don't they? I nodded again, this time more enthusiastically. Yes, they do. Good, he said. Now imagine this, you fix bicycles and charge a small fee. But instead of spending all the money, you save part of it. Over time, you'll have enough to buy tools or even spare parts. Eventually, you could train someone else to work for you. That way, the money comes in even when you're not working. I sat back, feeling like a light bulb had just gone on in my head. So I don't always have to work with my own hands to make money. Exactly, he said. That's called passive income. It means you put in effort at the beginning, but after some time, the money comes in on its own. But Uncle, I said, doesn't it take a long time to start seeing results? He nodded. It does. Just like the orange tree, you have to be patient. But isn't it better to wait and have something that lasts, instead of working hard every day without getting ahead? I thought about his words on my way home. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with ideas. Could I really learn to repair bicycles? Or maybe do something else that would pay off in the long run? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had been working hard, but not smart. The next day, I started taking small steps. I borrowed a repair kit from Uncle Okechukwu and asked him to teach me the basics. I also began saving a tiny part of my firewood earnings, no matter how small it seemed. It wasn't easy, but I felt a sense of hope I hadn't felt in a long time. Months later, something amazing happened. A neighbor brought his bicycle to me for repairs after hearing from Uncle Okechukwu that I was learning. I fixed it for a small fee. Soon, others started coming to me as well. Slowly but surely, I was building something that didn't depend entirely on my back and my axe. Now, whenever I look at an orange tree, I smile. It reminds me of the lesson that changed my life. Hard work is important, but building something that can work for you is even better. That's how I discovered the power of passive income. And just like the tree, it started small, but it grew into something I could rely on even on days when my hands weren't strong enough to work.